All right, we're back here. We're back. A little rough start. It's been a while, Alicia. Seems like I haven't been doing one of these for about a month.
I don't know if it's been that long, Mark.
Well, thanks so much for holding down the fort last week. And we're back. We had a lot of fun things going on yesterday. The office took a little pause for a very special occasion. And Alicia, I'm just trying to think here. I don't have a picture of the entire firm. Do you have one of those? Whose camera was it taken on?
Yeah, I put it in the chat, so it's all four of us on there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yesterday, you guys, I want to share with you that we had a pretty cool thing that happened, and we probably should have brought the man on himself to celebrate, but we have the very newest lawyer to our firm, and I will pull up in the interim. I'm just going to shift over to my screen here, and I'll just pull this one up right here. And we don't have Igor with us, but it's a little bit distorted. I'll get a better picture for you. But Igor Kryliuk is the newest immigration lawyer with Holthe Immigration Law. So he just got his bar call was yesterday. Oh, there's the picture. Okay, we'll pull this one. I've got a better picture for you folks with all of us. And you probably look at all the things that we do online and you think, wow, boy, they get a lot done. Well, in fairness, that might be the case, but this is the extent of our little firm. Let me pull it over here. There we go. There's us. That is Holthe Immigration Law. So there's Prem on the left, and then Igor, and then Alicia, and then myself. And that is in the Court of Appeal in Calgary. And yesterday, Igor had his bar call. And one of the cool things about bar calls in Alberta is that they are an individual affair. So I know Ontario is group mass calls. I think maybe Vancouver, like BC is as well. But in Alberta, we've still held to the premise that it's an individual thing. And so we're really, really excited. And I was able to say a few words in making the application to Justice Hawks, who's just a phenomenal individual I've known for many years. And it just serendipitously worked out that he was the one doing the bar call. And so, Igor's, his mother was tuning in remotely, and just a small little group of friends and family, and Tatiana was there, Igor's spouse, and it was just a wonderful morning, and we're so proud of him. He worked so hard to get it, and he's just going to be a phenomenal immigration lawyer. So I wonder if he's already updated the website. Hopefully, yeah. So very
I
cool.
thought it would actually be a good idea, Mark, because I know a few people have asked on the live streams as well. They've said, how do you become a lawyer in Canada? And so I thought that would be a good podcast for you and Igor to do is, his journey of he was a foreign trained lawyer in Ukraine, and how do you become recognized as a lawyer in Canada? And there's immigration aspects of that, but there's also just, the process and what does that look like in Canada?
Yes, we definitely have to do that. All right. So there has been lots of stuff on immigration in the news. Substantively, we're seeing a few draws, and whenever there are draws, then our phone rings, and our clients that have been waiting for invitations to apply let us know, which is really cool. And we really, really love that. But, I think this fall, Alicia, I think everything is just settling. It's just pacing itself. It's waiting. And I think this fall, we're going to see some pretty major changes. We know that the minister has been tweeting himself. I can't figure out why he doesn't just tweet the thing instead of comment or post a CBC article that he's quoted in, but whatever. The reality is they're definitely going to crack down on schools that do not properly track the status of their students and making sure that they're attending school, which has been a little bit of an issue in the past. And the department has mentioned this as a problem. And of course, when you come to study in Canada, the object of your purpose here is to study, and work is secondary. And so they're going to be cracking down on those kinds of things. And we know, Alicia, as well, that the caps are coming for temporary residents here in the fall. And I have to assume they will roll them out the same time they do for levels plans, maybe. Not quite sure if they'll wait that long, but we'll see how it all plays out. We'll give a few shout outs here. AK says, hey, Mark and Alicia, very good afternoon to both of you. Yes, Anastasia. She says, "Good morning, guys. How are you managing the heat? It's crazy." Well, um, yesterday we were pretty much inside enjoying the nice air conditioning in the courtroom, but it is definitely going to be heating up. And
Mhm.
there's a nice little river here, Anastasia. If you haven't gotten on that river with your tube and floated down, that's something that we like to do in the evenings when the sun isn't going to scorch us. But we're definitely looking for we're looking forward to some very, very warm temperatures. And we've had a pretty mild spring here. It's been great. There's been lots of rain and moisture that we so desperately needed. And now it's okay for a little bit of warmth to come, I think. At least that's my feeling. And Anastasia says, "Congratulations to Igor." We've got Who tuning in here. Great. And we've got a bunch of questions coming up as well. Cheryl says, "Congratulations to Igor." Um, and yes, VK says, "Waiting for French draw." Yes. Well, the reality is, if we flip over here to let's see if I've got it. I think I've got it queued up here. So the last draw that we just had, a French draw, the score was 420. So my goodness, you were close. You were
Yeah.
so close. 420. And it was a pretty large French draw, 3,200. And I think those of you who have been watching this, as we have, every week we wait to see if there's a new round of invitations. And just before that, on July the 5th, I think, was that the Friday? I think
Mhm.
July 5th, they did a fairly large healthcare draw, which was down to 445. So we've got a number of clients that are in that round of invitations. But as you can see here, you guys, it has been all the way since April since we last had a general draw, and this is a reality. So Alicia and I, we've done YouTube videos that we've released, podcast episodes on the state of the provincial nominee programs, and there's just massive pressure on all the programs. People have listened, and when we said you need to move from Ontario and BC, and now the reality is when you go to Alberta or Saskatchewan or Nova Scotia, there are so many people. There's more people there, even in those provinces, than there are room to basically transition everyone to PR. And I think we know that. As we look at the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program here, and we slide over to this little table that they have, you'll see that they have since adjusted the debacle from June 11th, and they opened up for July 9th to the row renewal stream and the tourism and hospitality stream, accelerated tech. You can see here they're only pulling from existing people that are in the pool. So there's no new real accelerated techs that were occurring here yesterday. I think it was, yeah, yesterday. But the province already tweeted, and I forwarded it on my X account, that it's obviously the targets have been met for these. And so now we're just waiting to see what it's going to look like July 11th. And it's interesting,
Tomorrow.
Alicia, I was experimenting a little bit the other day for the Alberta Opportunity Stream, but over the weekend I was working with a client to respond to something. And this is, I want to bring this up, Alicia, because we've had, I did a consult with a large number of employees, all collectively, for one company who received a procedural fairness letter. And some of you, especially in the accelerated tech pathway, are working for companies that just don't support PR flat out. And everybody has their reasons, and I don't want to be too critical of some companies. It's really easy for me to be critical sometimes, but the reality is some companies just have policies of not supporting permanent residents. And when you're going through the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program now, and in particular the accelerated tech pathway, you really, really need the support of your employer. You pretty much can't do it without it. And ironically, these individuals all submitted applications with the old checklist. So effectively, the old checklist didn't have some of the more heightened requirements for employers. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Alicia, and get your take, because once again, I need to take a step back and not be too critical. But why do you think the province of Alberta instituted these more heightened employer verification requirements? Why in the world do you think that was happening?
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that Alberta took a look at what was happening with the AAIP in general, and they said, wait a minute, we have too many people applying for these programs, and we have cases where there are businesses that are not fully supportive of these applications or that don't actually have offices that operate in Alberta. They don't have enough employees in Alberta. They don't have physical space where people can go on a regular basis. And we want some proof of this ahead of time, which only makes sense. But they only instituted these new requirements in the employer declaration forms, you know, after March, basically. So March was kind of the cutoff, March 18th. And then they didn't make that a mandatory part of a AOS application until June, right when they changed this whole kind of lottery to enter with this queue system. So when you now have employers, the question is what's going to happen? And I've had a few consults like this too. What's going to happen to all those people? Because if you look at the processing inventory, there's over 3,000 applications that they're processing from last November. So, what's going to happen with all those people who don't have that same heightened employer declaration form, business license, or proof of business legitimacy? Is AOS going to come back and say, prove it? And if they do, then your employers need to be able to still say, yes, we have a job offer for this person. We're going to update you with our corporate information to prove we're a legitimate business. But it puts employers and employees in a very difficult position for the AAIP to say, we're going to get your tax returns, their corporate tax returns for the last 2 years, because the corporations are saying, well, we don't want to disclose that to our employees. If we are a private company, we don't want to have our public or financial information public. So this becomes quite a big issue for companies now who are trying to look at whether they do support an employee under the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program. And the other thing is for smaller employers, this is where the rubber hits the road, that smaller employers may not meet that new threshold where they have to prove that they've been in operation for 2 full corporate fiscal years and that they actually are able to prove that they are making enough money in gross revenue to support, so $400,000 in gross revenue, to support giving these employees offers of employment as a foreign worker. And then if they've only been in operation for 2 years and they can't meet that 400,000, they're limited to only supporting one person. And it doesn't say for what period. So these are all super thorny issues.
And part of the reason, you guys, I had Alicia give that explanation is because I'm really disappointed with the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program. Like, I attended, like I said in the past, the Seeds of Change conference on rural immigration in Brooks a little over a month ago. And I presented with some officers from the rural renewal stream. And on basically, they're the ones that were kind of managing the program. And I said to them, because at the time it was still open, there was no caps for the communities. And I said, look, you guys have to understand, you're going to have 5,000 applications by the end of the year. Are you doing something to cap this or to restrict it? And they didn't say anything, and that's fine. Like it's their prerogative to keep on the lowdown. There's no way that they didn't have plans, to do this, but just how they've rolled it out. And when you look at what the other provinces are doing, who are in no different situation than Alberta, guys, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You
Mm-hmm.
don't. You can look at Ontario, you can look at BC, and you look at how they're managing an overwhelming demand for these precious nomination spots. And it's hard for candidates who have lower human capital because the Alberta Opportunity Stream was designed for them. There was a time when we just didn't have really enough of the higher end skilled high wage individuals to fill the quota that Alberta was giving. And then over time, in the last few years, as the volumes of open work permit holders and post-grad work permit holders who are staying in Alberta, and even LMIA-based workers in Alberta, as those numbers started to climb, more people started applying for LMIAs, then pretty much everybody was eligible for the Alberta Opportunity Stream. And when everybody's eligible and you only have so many spots, something has to give. And so the province, there's only one direction, Alicia, I see that they can go, and that's to follow the pattern of Ontario and British Columbia. And for sure, changes have to happen. But how they've rolled it out here with a race to file is just, I don't know. It's hard not to be critical because it's the most inequitable process that I can ever imagine. That's all based on the speed of your internet connection or your technological ability.
Yeah, and
It's
I,
just
I
tough.
totally agree with you, Mark. Like, if you're going to have basically a way to close those floodgates, then do it in a transparent manner. So do it like BC, do it like Ontario, where you have an expression of interest and you have points, and candidates get points based on different human capital factors for that province. And then everybody knows ahead of time what they're dealing with. And it also gives you kind of um, a way to manage your expectations, right? If you can see what's going on, how many nominations are in, and what they're at in processing times for that application, then you can kind of gauge what your chances are for the year or 2 years from now in terms of that program. So if you had a set criteria rather than what Alberta has in terms of a black box, these are the factors we look at, but we don't guarantee we're even going to process your application, and we can choose to change the program or close the program whenever we want. Um, it's really hard for people to try to plan their lives.
Very hard. I've got one question here that came up. I'm just going to pull this one up while I'm pulling up the YouTube channel for us. Let's see here. Hugh says, could you please explain what the difference is between eligibility and background check, including security and info sharing? Thanks. So if you guys, I think you know by now, when you go to the YouTube channel, all of our videos are all housed right here on our YouTube channel. And within there, you will see one of the more recent episodes that I did. If I can find it, I'm pretty sure it's here. Let's see. Maybe it's not there. So one of the more recent ones that I did with Will Tao is exactly on this topic. So uncovering the truth, IRC security screening delays. We talked in depth about how this works, the background checks, the security screening, resources that are out there to help explain things. So Hugh, I recommend that you take a look at that video, and then it will go into depth how everything works. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, look at who we've got here. All right. Igor says, tuning in from Calgary. Thanks for a very kind intro part during this live Q&A. Love you guys. You bet, Igor. We are so proud of you. And just to remind everybody, right here, we had Igor's bar call yesterday. So he is the newest lawyer called to the bar in the province of Alberta. Maybe 1024, maybe somebody else is just doing their call right now. I don't know. But as of yesterday, Igor was the newest fully called lawyer in the province of Alberta and the newest member of our HIL team, our immigration lawyer team. So we're so proud of him. He worked really hard. And so big shout out to Igor. All right. Okay. We'll go through a few more. We've got lots of congratulations. And yeah, VK says it hurts that it was very close. Can only hope. Yes. VK is commenting on the 420, I think it was, round of invitation. And VK was at 417. Okay. Let's see what we've got here. Anatoly says, hi, Alicia and Mark. Wishing you a great live Q&A. Tuning in from Toronto, and I'm finally expecting to get my PR card next week, as my PR card application was approved just yesterday. So we will give you, I was going to give you some applause. Let's get the audio going up here. A little delayed clap here for him. All right, here we go. There we go. That's the proper celebration. Congratulations to you. Okay. What is this? The Sox Buzz is Mark the man, the myth, the legend. Nice. Thank you for the consult beforehand about our doubt in your course. With your course, I might as well become an RCIC. AOR April 23rd, ECOPER July 8th. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. May, June, July, just 3 months. That's fantastic. I'm so glad that you that the course was helpful. You know, it's interesting, Alicia, there's so much out there, Chat GPT, all this AI, all these forums, all of these things designed to assist people in preparing their applications. And I want to jump back to this right here and just finish off the initial discussion, that I brought up. This group of people who applied under the accelerated tech pathway, once again, they didn't have employers that were interested in supporting them. And I'm just going to remove here my, just give me a second here. We'll just remove this and this. There we go. Basically what happened was they had all applied, and there were larger numbers of individuals who were applying through the accelerated tech pathway because their occupations were on the list, and their employer's a global company. And they were doing everything that they needed to do based on the rules before the March 18th change. But then what happened was the Alberta program felt that maybe the company didn't have as large of a presence in the province to justify the issuance of nominations. And they had some questions about how the company was represented in the individual applications. And all these individuals, they tended to use one consultant, at least that's what I could see. And I'm not sure if the consultant really understood the rules or what the situation was. I think they were just following what had been done in the past that had worked. But this time, the province decided to do a visit to the location of the company, and they didn't have a full-fledged office in the normal way you would expect for a large company. And the government, the province, took exception to that. And so they issued them a procedural fairness letter, all of them, saying, hey, we don't believe that what you put in your application was actually accurate, and we think you may have misrepresented. And of course, when the company was contacted by the province, they had no desire to support PR. So in many respects, they undermined what the individuals had submitted in their applications. They literally, in some cases, didn't even respond to the province, and which I think that is really weak because it puts the individuals in a really compromised position. And but sometimes companies, they just, they have policies and they don't bend. So in the case of these individuals, I worked last night with one client to, most of the individuals, we had a consult. I told them, kind of give them some ideas on how to try to mitigate the damage, essentially, because nobody wants a misrepresentation finding, even from the province. And so one client retained me to assist her, and we spent probably 4 hours yesterday evening after I got home from Calgary from the bar call, putting together her response. And one of my arguments was, hey, I know as a province you can do whatever you want, but these are not, individuals making $19 an hour. Like, they are very skilled, highly educated tech, project managers making over 6 figures. And they are really, like, they're going to be employable in Alberta, even if they're, if they get PR and decide to move to another company, or whether their employer supports them. So we made a lot of those arguments, and the fact that many of them had moved to Alberta and have kids in school. And if they're not good candidates for the province, then I don't know what might be. But the reality, Alicia, and I'll jump back to our main screen, the reality is that the province is looking for people that they feel are going to stay. And what's happened is people are moving for short periods of time to other provinces from, say, Ontario or British Columbia. And many of them, and I'll say many, when they get their PR, then choose to just go back to those provinces. And so Alberta is really looking for individuals that they feel have a really good chance of staying. And if your company doesn't have a really solid bricks and mortar presence, or you can do your job remotely or virtually, then that can be a real challenge getting a nomination from Alberta at this time, because they really, really value those precious spots. And all of the changes that they're making, including the employer verification process, is to catch not only individuals that they feel won't stay, but even fraud. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that's going on within immigration right now. And I've seen a lot within the temporary foreign worker program that is now becoming more, it's coming out of the shadows a lot more. And people are now more willing to say, yeah, this is what's happening. Because even with these sold LMIAs, which are totally illegal, people still don't have a chance in many instances of getting PR, especially if there's no general draws, right?
Yeah, and so there's a few questions I see about Alberta Tech pathway now, and we haven't, we were talking about AOS, but the same thing applies to Alberta Tech with respect to these employer declaration and the requirements of a valid job offer. And so there's an issue because I actually had somebody book a consult on this matter too, because they had filed an Alberta Tech before all the new guidelines came out. So before March 18th, when the new
Yep.
guidelines came out, and there wasn't a explicit requirement that an employer be in operation for 2 years at that point.
No,
And
no.
so now they're like, well, what do I do? My
Yep.
application was submitted before March of 2023 or 2024, sorry, and it's been in process, but now if they ask for 2 years of operation, you know, this is a subsidiary company, and the reason we picked that sub company was because of the NAICS code. And now you get into a whole world of, well, what if the parent company is actually a different business unit and has a different NAICS code? You're going to have a hard time relying on them that has been in operation for longer and you might get into a situation of misrepresentation. So,
Yeah.
book a consult if this is your situation where you have a company that hasn't been in operation for 2 years. If you filed that application prior to March 18th of 2024, and that wasn't a requirement, I think it wasn't a requirement at that time. I think
Yeah.
hopefully people, as long as they're being honest, will say, look, the company's business started in 2023. They have a year of corporate tax returns. It's a legitimate business. They have a lease. They have, whatever it is. But understand that AIP might just say, too bad you don't meet our program requirements as they exist today.
Yeah, and they have, and understand this is something you guys need to understand is that the province of Alberta, there is a history behind them basically saying, "Hey, we can do anything we want. Even if you qualify, there's no guarantee that you're going to get a nomination. We have the ability to make changes. Essentially, they are creatures of policy." And in the past, they had programs where I remember there was a family program and there was also an H-1B program, and they thought, hey, these are great ideas. And then a whole bunch of people applied, massive crushing interest in it that they never anticipated. Well, they had no disclaimers. And so because there was no disclaimers, they had to process all of those applications that were submitted because they met the requirements. And in like manner, IRCC, if you meet the eligibility requirements and you go, for the program, and whether you receive an invitation to apply or whatnot, they don't have discretion built in to just say, nah, we're not going to process you. At least generally speaking, that's the case. If you're eligible, then you've got a shot at it. Now, understand, being eligible to enter into the express entry pool and be open potentially for an ITA doesn't guarantee anything. But once you receive your invitation to apply, if you meet the requirements of the program and you can demonstrate it, your application will be processed. Well, that's not necessarily the case for Alberta. They can choose to do what they want. And I will be honest, Alicia, retroactively applying, new updated policies to previously submitted applications and then alleging possible misrepresentation, I think is a little bit of a stretch. And I think it's that, there's some elements of procedural fairness that may be breached in those circumstances. So we'll see how it goes with all these individuals. But there's probably 14 or 15 of them at least, Alicia, that received these procedural fairness letters, and the deadline to respond was today. And so we'll see what happens with my client and where it goes. But people need to be aware that you have to be careful. You have to take ownership. Now, the consultant who helped these individuals, maybe they had success doing it a certain way for years and never really had any intention of making any changes. Maybe there's no need to make changes. I don't know. But boy, when I looked at what was submitted and the reality of what was, in the province for this company, arguably the officer was justified in refusing, based on the new rules. So we'll see.
And
Mm-hmm.
and I want to stop you there, Mark, and I want to tell everybody, maybe you think we've gone off on a tangent about provincial nominee programs and employers and things like that, but it is so, so important. If you ever get a procedural fairness letter, please, please book a consultation with a lawyer, because those procedural fairness letters are not something to be trifled with. It basically means immigration has reason to believe that they're going to refuse your application. There's some grounds that they think is pretty darn offside. Or worse yet, that procedural fairness letter also puts you on notice that they might say you are inadmissible for misrepresentation under Section 40 of the Act. If that is on your procedural fairness letter and you only have 15 or 30 days to respond to them, you had better start working really hard to try to address their concerns and meet with an immigration lawyer and prepare a very solid argument, because you are potentially looking at not only having your application refused, but being barred from Canada as an inadmissible person for 5 years.
And that's something that a lot of people they really don't understand. They really don't. Okay, let's hit just quickly on the program. These questions related to the program. So Ragav says, is there any possibility to apply in Tech Pathway if employers started their business in 2023? And so this harkens back to those new rules.
And that's exactly what I was talking about, Raghav, is that, maybe if you had submitted this application with your employer support before March of 2024, and this wasn't a requirement then, you might be able to try to say, look, it's a legitimate business. requirements weren't in effect when we submitted the application. If you're applying now, then no, because if you look at the Alberta Tech pathway requirements and you go down to eligibility, it clearly says employers and job offers must meet the job offer and employer requirements, and it links you to them. And one of the main requirements is that the business has been in operation for at least 2 years. So that is a timing issue. And it also depends on whether you filed your application or you've not filed one yet. So talk to your employer. If you do have, I know there are some questions about related businesses, right? If it's a sister company and the parent company has been in operation for longer, maybe there's some sort of argument there, but you do have to be super careful about those NAICS codes, because if the reason you picked your employer and that's who's your employer of record is because they have the tech industry, if you start fudging things and saying, well, the parent company's been in operation for more than 2 years, but they've got a different NAICS code, I think you're starting to walk on thin ice.
All right. So I'm just going to pull this up, this quick comment here, the super chat. They asked about the Century Initiative. So the goal is to increase Canada's population to 100 million by the year 2100. And so, yes, there is a group that is working towards that, and they are called the Century Initiative. And so, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but ultimately there are some that really feel that this is the direction Canada needs to go. And this has been around for, they've been working at this for a little bit. It'll be very interesting to see, Alicia, how the recent challenges we're having with our infrastructure, like housing and healthcare and all those kinds of things, how that is impacted or how that impacts the strength of this, this initiative, because there's a lot of support behind it. And when we look at our aging population and the need, if, we are a socialist country, really are. We believe in pooling all of our resources together to make sure that everybody has a good quality of life. And that's one of the good things about Canada. And so some people feel as the population ages and the workforce numbers start to dwindle, one of the pillars of immigration and why we're so bullish on these, on immigration and the numbers, is to make sure that we are bringing people in enough to support people in retirement and to continue to maintain the foundation of our system. So interesting to see how this ultimately plays out. But yep, it's a thing. And yes, as lawyers, we've heard of it. All right, we'll keep moving forward here. Okay, next, let's pull that off. Okay. All right. Next question, back to Isabella. She says, if I get nominated through the tech pathway, will I lose my PR if I change an occupation or move out of the province?
And so, Isabella, Mark and I just did a podcast actually on intent to reside. And so hopefully, Mark, it's posted. I'm not sure
It's
if
not
it
yet,
is or not.
Alicia.
Okay.
But yes,
Okay.
yeah, I'm a bad person. Okay. it definitely it's on the radar.
Okay. Mark, you're not a bad person, but we all have lots of things to do and not enough time to do it. So, Isabella, Mark and I recorded a podcast last week
Yes.
about intent to reside because there actually was a federal court case on somebody who didn't meet their residency obligation. They were nominated through a province. In this case, it was the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program, and they had a place in Saskatchewan, but they also rented a place in Ontario. Their wife went to Ontario for some work stuff. Their kids went to Ontario for some school stuff. And ultimately, the officer said, we're going to refuse your PR for failure to meet your residency obligation and intent to reside in the province. So it's the same thing here. If you get nominated through Alberta Tech Pathway, you've submitted your application, and you change your occupation, when you read through the fine print on the AAIP, you have a positive obligation to notify them of a material change in circumstances. Same with IRCC if it's a express entry tech pathway that's linked to IRCC as well. So you have a positive obligation to notify IRCC also. And to keep your address up to date. And so if you have not yet got your PR, that for sure can put your application at risk. Even if you do have your PR, and as soon as you get your PR, you turn around and you move, that can also put your PR at risk. They can come back and say, you basically misrepresented. You did not have a valid intention to reside in the province because the instant you got your PR, you moved.
All right. Okay. And then Ramakrishnan says, I applied for accelerated tech on June 4th. Any idea when they will send notification of interest? Okay. So this here, when it comes to the notifications of interest, I had a client, like everything has kind of changed, excuse me, as a result of this, crushing volume. So you indicated that you applied on June the 4th for the accelerated tech pathway. And I'm just wondering, so June, I can't remember when things were shut down, Alicia. So June 11th is when they had the first, like when they first opened it up. I thought it was actually closed. But I guess at that stage, maybe June 4th was one of the last times you could submit it before people were caught in here. But I had Ramakrishnan, I had a client who we also submitted in May, and I'll be honest, it was like a week and a half. So back then, it was about a week and a half from when we submitted the notification of interest, well, at least our intent, until we got the email from the AIP to then submit the formal application through the tech pathway. So yeah, at this stage, it's really up in the air as to how they're treating these applications, given the volumes that they're trying to manage. But one thing we know is that the processing times that they've listed, there's only one thing that can happen to the processing times in this new world, and that's that they're going to go down, because they're not, stuck with this crushing volume of applications they have to process. Now they've got large backlogs. And I know we're spending a lot of time in Alberta, but Alicia and I are Alberta immigration lawyers here. But when you look at the volumes, unprocessed applications, like AOS itself, there's no first in, first out, you guys. So they say they're currently assessing applications received on or before November 15th, 2023. So do you see what this means? On or before. So there could have been applications submitted in September, October that they're not even processing. And I have seen AOS, some of the ones in certain sectors like healthcare, although through the express entry stream, that even go quicker than others. And you can see here, the dedicated healthcare pathway is a priority for the province. So anyone going through that, they're looking at applications that were submitted when? 1 month ago. And you look at all the other pathways, they say back to February 20th. So there isn't a first in, first out. They prioritize applications. And yeah, as far as timing goes, it's really, it's anyone's guess really what the priority is. But yeah,
And
it is. Yes.
And
Go
Mark,
ahead, Alicia.
the other elephant in the room, and this is not just for Alberta, but for almost all the provinces, is that the nomination spots are filling up, right? There are many of the provinces, especially Alberta, given the backlog and given how many people they have already given nominations to, there are not enough spots to be able to have a hope for getting a nomination for Alberta for this year. Because if you scroll up on that same page there where it's talking about the processing times and inventory, you'll see that, Alberta only has 9,750 nominations so far for the year. And we have already issued a whole bunch of them. And so, there are not that many left if you do the math on this. And they don't have to prioritize AOS at all. They can put all their eggs in the basket for rural renewal or tourism and hospital. They can allocate it the way that they want. So,
Yeah.
they had guidelines for what they thought they might do in terms of percentages, but they're not bound by that.
Yeah. And you can see here, once again, Alicia, just to highlight quickly, 9,750. And then these are the nominations issued as of, what's the date on this?
June
June.
25th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right up here, June 25th, as of June 25th. So less than a month ago, 2 weeks ago, they had processed 5,168. And then look at how many unprocessed applications are in the queue right now. 6,000.
Right.
So do the math. So they
Right.
already have received more applications this year that would be needed to meet the quota. Now, it's possible, Alicia, that the feds may toss them a bone and give them a few more nominations. But I really don't see that happening today in this world. In the past, some provinces didn't use up all those spots, and so they would reallocate or reshuffle some of the nominations to other provinces that could use them. That's not the case anymore. I'm not aware of any province that can't meet their, their quota of, for issuing nominations. So what do you do? And this is, I think, why a lot of people are here watching the video right now. What do we do when we are not getting CRS scores high enough? There haven't been general draws. We're not in the category-based draws. We don't speak French. The provinces like Alberta are race to file, and even then, it's, maybe I'm on an open work permit generally, and I didn't study in Alberta. What are my options? And so then Adnan asks a good question here. He says, is there a way to extend LMIA work permits even just for 6 months without having to go through the full LMIA process again? So, Alicia, what is your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on that are legitimately no. If your company wants to keep you for longer, the safest thing for you to do is to have your employer well ahead of time again start advertising and recruiting. And they say, look, we still need this person. We still can't find a Canadian to fill the role, but they have to go through a legitimate advertising and recruiting period. Most of the time, it's going to be for 4 weeks continuous. If it's a high skilled job, it has to be on the job bank, 2 other national sources of advertisement. And they have to prove that the candidates who applied, who are Canadian, just didn't fit the bill for what they needed for that role. And they have to be offering at least the median wage rate for your location for that knock. So median wage rate. If your company doesn't do that and they have not submitted that new LMIA, so at least done the advertising and submitted the LMIA, and you have an LMIA number, if you go to try to extend your work permit, you will be refused. It's just a matter of time.
All right, I'm shifting around here. My little friend here to my left wanted to jump down, so I let him out of the window. All right, so yes. So when it comes, just to add to what Alicia had said, one of the things that we know in the world of the temporary foreign worker program, at this stage, it's not like the U.S., where there are caps on the number of H-1B visas that are issued each year. And so employers are in this lottery hoping that they can get an LMIA for their employee. One of the advantages to the temporary foreign worker program is that if your employer can demonstrate that there are no Canadians or permanent residents to fill the position, then the LMIA will be approved and you'll be able to extend your work permit, and there isn't a cap. But they, like Alicia said, they still have to go through the process. But one thing that is now starting to surface, and I was following a Reddit kind of post, and it was essentially, well, allegedly an ESDC officer who, was basically, I don't want to call it a whistleblower, but they were just really tired and fed up with the foreign worker program because of the fraud that was so rampant within it. And they talked about the challenges that they had going after companies or questioning when they didn't believe an employer, that they'd actually done the recruiting properly, that they had legitimately give opportunities to Canadians. And we know, Alicia, we've seen this. There is big money in these fake job offers and huge incentives to people to use them, both individuals who are desperate, even though it is illegal, 100% illegal, and the companies and the agents who are involved in it, whether they're regulated representatives or not. And I'll tell you, if I ever heard of an immigration lawyer involved in any kind of a scam like that, I would not hesitate to report them to the Law Society, and they would 100%, well, I don't know how many, maybe they might not be fully disbarred, but wow, there would be some massive punishment. And, and I just wish that the Consulting Association, would go after individuals in the same way. But the reality is, I think even if they wanted to, people have to come forward and there has to be evidence to show it. And unfortunately, in some of the immigration communities around the country, people are so desperate to stay that they don't want to rat out that this is a bad thing, that this is happening. And it's only going to get worse. And I've said this in the past because there are not enough spots for everybody to become a permanent resident. And Alicia and I have talked a lot about this in the past. But if you do want to stay and you are with an employer who has no intention of even trying for an LMIA, a legitimate LMIA, and you're
Find a
on an
new
open
employer.
work permit, find a new employer. And I even talked with, all of these individuals who are working for this company. Most of them are on intercompany transfer work permits. So that it's not a matter of just simply moving, but how much loyalty do you have to an employer who says, no, I'm not going to support you in your PR journey? And it's not just, it's not just small little businesses that say, no, we can't, we're not going to support you. It's often the large institutional clients like our banks that really
Mhm.
will never support you with an LMIA, or some of the larger, like I said, institutional clients, the large ones. And so anyways, I think we've talked
Yeah.
about this and kind of beat this one as as much as we can, but yeah, go ahead, Alicia.
Yeah, and the one thing I do want to circle back to is if people are running out of time, right? If your status is going to expire, if you know that your work permit's expiring, there are a few things to try to give yourself more chances, right? Language. So always, always, always make sure you are maximizing your language scores. So if you do, and almost for every program, you need to have either IELTS or your CELPIP or your Pearson test. If you are not hitting those CLB 7 levels, you are going to have a very, very difficult time. If you can hit that CLB 9 level, then you've got hopefully more chances, but maximizing that. If you can get full, absolute full marks on every single field, that is so important. Same with French, right? So if your first language is English and you are able to get some French, those French points right now are huge. Um, in terms of other things that you can do, it's looking to find an employer who's willing to support an LMIA legitimately. If any employer or any agent or any consultant ever tells you that you need to pay for an LMIA, like there's some sort of fee that you have to pay for an LMIA, run the other direction and hopefully report them because that is totally illegal. You cannot pay them anything for the LMIA, and you are also not allowed ever to pay the government application fee of $1,000 for the company to submit the LMIA application, ever. So don't ever do it. But the other thing is that sometimes in some provinces, we've seen this in Manitoba, we've talked about this a bit, some provinces are saying, well, this is the case. All right, IRCC, for people who are in the program, like who've applied to the PNP, give them some sort of temporary work permit in the meantime, just to give them a few months of breathing space. And we don't know, that might happen for Alberta too. So even though things are looking pretty bleak in terms of whether you're going to actually get your full nomination within the next year, it might still be worthwhile for you to tough out that ridiculous queue system, because maybe, just maybe, Alberta will do what Manitoba did and be able to lobby the federal government to get temporary work permit holders, basically, to get temporary work permit status for people who actually have submitted applications. We don't know, we have no idea, but it's a possibility.
Yeah. And one thing I want to point out too with the Manitoba policy is that this protects people who have submitted a valid
Hmm.
Manitoba PNP expression of interest. So it isn't an
Yeah,
actual application. It's just,
yeah.
and in fairness, this encompasses the post-grad work permit holders. So individuals that have studied uh, arguably in Manitoba and now want to stay. So there's some interest. If people usually, if they study in a certain province, they tend to stay there when, there's more likelihood that they're going to stay. So yeah, we don't know what's going to happen ultimately as things start to unfold, but these are issues we recognize that all of you guys are struggling with. Adnan has a follow up. He said, the reason for my previous question is because I applied for rural renewal last month and LMIA work permit expires in April next year. That's why. Adnan, get a new LMIA. Full stop.
Hmm.
Do not ever wait on, especially the province of Alberta, the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program, to save your work status. They do not want any part of anyone with a work permit that is expired, or even someone that's in maintained status. Now, it's possible, Adnan, one of the things people wait for is an R204C letter. And if that letter comes together with the nomination, then yes, you can use that to extend your work permit. But no, under no circumstance in the current world we're in, with lengthy processing times and now restrictions on the number of rural renewal stream applications coming in, I just would not take the chance of hoping that you get the nomination and the 204C letter to then allow you to extend your permit. Just don't do it.
Yeah, it's only if you actually have the nomination from the province that they would also, on a rural renewal, issue you what's called a Regulation 204C letter. It's a provincial letter of support for you to apply for that work permit for that employer. So if you've got employment restrictions on your nomination, they will have employment restrictions on your new work permit where you can still only work for that same employer.
All right, and then I will just pull up one last one here. This is a super from Micanet Systems. I did a 2-year Bachelor of Ed from Ghana, but Wes evaluation says it's equivalent to a 4-year Bachelor's Ed in Canada. Should I choose 2-year Bachelor of Ed or 4 years? You're going to choose 3 or more years is what you're going to do. So effectively, if Wes is the decider of all things, and usually we don't see this. Usually what we see is that if there's maybe a 4-year program, or better yet, a master's, sometimes they will equate it to a bachelor's level, or a 4-year program to a 3. But the key is that it's hitting 3 years. That's when 3 years or more, that's the bachelor's. That's where you're getting those points. And in your case, if Wes says, and you can confirm that, if Wes says that it's the equivalent of a 4-year BEd in Canada, then you can consider it to be that for the purposes of express entry.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that too, because it does become confusing when these things happen. So you'll have to properly claim the points, but then when you go into the detailed fields and you're entering in your education history, you still have to be honest and say that this is
Yep.
when I started and this is when I ended. And then you're going to want to do a letter of explanation if you get your invitation to apply. So there are some wrinkles that make it a little bit trickier.
Absolutely. And that's a good segue actually into the Express Entry Accelerator course, which every 2 weeks, Wednesdays from 4 to 6, or however long, people, when they show up, when you subscribe to the course, the complete step-by-step walkthrough of everything, including, and you can go here to the link, and there's a link in the description. There are modules that cover every single aspect of the whole Express Entry process, including mastering your documents, which is just full of a lesson for every single document that you're uploading and submitting. When it comes to education, and I'm just going to flip over here to, let's see, I think I've got it. I just pulled it up. Maybe I didn't, right here. So when it comes to the education factors, what we're talking about here, just so that people can see, let's see, I think I maybe jumped too far. Right here. So what we're looking at is the points that are awarded for a bachelor's degree. And like Alicia said, or a 3 or more year program at a university. So if you took a 2-year program at a university in your home country, but Wes equated that to a 4-year program, then like Alicia said, I would always include a letter of explanation, but you go with the equivalency. And that's obviously a big point jump, the difference between the two. So letters of explanation are something that we cover in detail in the course. In fact, it is a lesson in and of itself on how we structure letters of explanation. And and remember that when we go through this process, the master classes allow you to come for as long as you want. Once you subscribe, you have access to all future accelerator programs, as well as the ability to come and join me every other week to get any specific questions that you have answered. So I would hold this program up against anything that's out there in the market right now. And, there's about 10 hours of content, but literally you take a weekend, you go through the course, you know everything that you need to know to make sure that you're avoiding the most common problem areas that people fall into. And it's not the big things, guys, that cause people problems. It's not. It's the little things that you just don't realize. And those things are the things that are covered in the course. And often when people attend the master classes and are tuning in, they learn from the questions that other people ask. It's a wonderful, wonderful model, something I've been doing since probably 2016, I think, was when I first did the first full live masterclass series. So yeah, we've been doing this for a long time, and it's you can go. The link is in the description to subscribe. Okay, let's see what we have next here. We've been hitting all the super chats first, but there's a pile of people that have chimed in with a lot of different questions, and just so that you guys know, we don't answer, just like the province of Alberta, we don't answer people first in, first out. We choose the questions that we feel will bring the most benefit to the most people that are watching. And so that's why I pull up questions like AK. My score recently jumped to 531 from 514. Any idea how soon can I get that under CEC? Well, AK, if we were to go to the rounds of invitations, and I'll just pull this up here, you will see that the biggest issue is that they haven't done a general draw for some time. And the general draw at 529, if we look at your score, if you've jumped up to 531, we haven't had a general draw for a long time, which means that these scores, the next time they do a draw, unless it's a big, massive scoop, the scores are probably going to be more comparable to 549 instead of 529. But we just don't know for certain. And when you look at these, the historical tables, one of the things that I like about the rounds of invitations, and when they're providing breakdowns of basically the candidates in the pool, you have at least some extent. This was last July 2nd, so we're talking over a week ago. You can see how many people are in the pool at over 500. Like it's crazy. And one thing, Alicia, I think we're at the stage now where they really should break this down so that, because we don't care really as much about 490, to 500, like the 450 to 500. We don't really care about this breakdown. Now what we're looking for is this breakdown, the 501 to 550 maybe, because that's really where we're curious as to where these people sit. And remember, all of these people, you guys, every single one in this group of 501 to 600 are not PNP nominees. Right. The PNP nominees all have 600 points to start with. Then their human capital's added on. So these are people that are just regular people with human capital. French, maybe job offers. Some could be even executives with 200-point job offers in C-suite level positions, the 00 tiers. So keep all of that, keep all of that in mind. So AK, just have to see how it plays out.
And the other thing
yes.
too, Mark, is, it could be a CEC draw, right? So the last CEC draw was 522. So maybe, but because they haven't done a CEC or a general draw for a while, we just, hopefully a 531 is going to be something where you will get an invitation to apply, but you're going to be hoping for that CEC or a general draw with a CRS level that's lower than yours.
All right. Okay, Christian asks this question. He says, Mark and Alicia, greetings from Spain. Greetings, Christian. With Spain, they're still in the Euros, I think, aren't they? I think so. Let's see. I was watching that carefully. I believe they are. Did they play? Alicia, you watch international football, right?
I know Canada got knocked out yesterday, but
Canada got knocked out of the Copa America. But I was sure that Spain was still in the running. Anyways, okay, I'm probably wasting time here talking about things that the vast majority of people are not interested in. But yes, here we go. Okay. Yes. Oh, not only are they in it, you can see here semifinals Netherlands and England. Spain is waiting. So Spain is actually waiting for the final. So there you go. Congratulations, Christian. We'll keep our fingers crossed they can take it home. Unfortunately, my dear Portugal lost to France. So I'm definitely, that was a sad occurrence. Okay, moving on. So the question is, work history to claim points is listed separately from personal work history in the application. No need to provide letters from listed work experience. So this is a pretty straightforward one.
And so keep in mind for express entry, there are two things you have to do. One is if you are doing your profile, you have to write down everything that you are claiming points for in terms of work experience points. And there's another question, and maybe I'll try to hit that one exactly the same time. If you're looking at foreign work experience, you have to look backwards in time from today for the last 10 years and see if you have valid work experience. So it's based on the date that you are putting in that profile, and it's got to be accurate. And then everything's kind of locked in when you actually have your ITA. So be careful on that, but the clock keeps moving, right? You can't just rely on a calendar year. So when you are looking at this, you put in the points that you are going to claim for your work history, for foreign work experience and Canadian work experience if you have it. If you also get an invitation to apply, you will have your whole personal history, and your personal history has to have absolutely everything that you have done with every single day of your life, and it can have overlapping periods of time. But those are not things that you're claiming points for. That is because you want to make sure that you are completely and accurately representing your life, your travel history, your addresses, your studies, and all of your work. But immigration doesn't provide an upload spot for proving that work history. It's just you cannot have any gaps in time, and you must be absolutely honest and accurate.
I'm going to pull this comment from Nicole, which she just exhibits the frustration, which I know many people who are watching are feeling. So I'm afraid we will face the same terrible situation again tomorrow. Alberta, 6 years in Edmonton, having a degree from the U of A, having full-time permanent job offer in the Ministry of Health, still no PR. And that's why I truly feel like, Alberta, come on, you guys. Like there's lots of examples, and if you just communicate with your fellow provinces, you can see how they've structured it. So our heart goes out to you, Nicole. And hopefully the Ministry of Health will support you with an LMIA so that you can stay in the running. And then maybe just maybe, the province will get things sorted out by the fall, and these projected timelines, they're not going to continue following them. That's what I would like to see. But more than likely, we're kind of stuck in this until January of next year when they decide to revamp things, but we'll see how it plays out. Okay, I want to pull up, this is kind of a tricky one from Naranjan. He says, if the LMIA was issued after I got an ITA, my employer saying he'll give my name in unnamed LMIA after I get an ITA, but before, can I mention yes in the profile for valid LMIA while creating the profile I'm on a postgrad work permit? I can answer this one, Alicia. So effectively, Naranjan, if you do not have your name on an LMIA, it's not a job offer. So if your employer is doing it in an unnamed LMIA and not adding your name to it, and the LMIA was issued after you got your ITA, then at some point you arguably could have, well, not a misrepresentation, but it's not a job offer for the purposes of express entry. So it has to be valid. Your name has to be on it. It has to have been issued before you get your ITA. And so if you put yes in your profile, you have a job offer. It will ask for the information. So I'm assuming if you answered yes, that it didn't give you points. If it did give you points, then somehow you've answered a question in a way that probably wasn't accurate. And it wouldn't be possible to now save it after the ITA is issued. So you have to be very, very careful, trying to proactively, indicate you have something that you don't have it yet. It would be misrepresentation. All right. Next one here is Mickey. And he says, if I have a second job, which I work remotely for a foreign company in Canada, could it count as foreign work experience? So in Canada, I don't know if they're studying right now. Doesn't say, Mickey doesn't say, but if they're working virtually for a company outside of Canada, and could that count as foreign work experience? What do you think, Alicia?
Yeah. And this is something where IRCC has not given policy guidance. They know that it's an issue. They said that they're working on their policy guidance, and so far they have not provided it publicly. And so these are always super tricky situations. We know for sure that if you are inside Canada and you're a full-time student, you cannot claim any sort of work in Canada as Canadian high-skilled work. We know that if you're outside Canada and you've got a foreign employer and you're getting paid by in foreign dollars to your foreign account, that's probably going to be foreign work experience. But when we have this whole virtual world of, well, you're in Canada, but you're working for a foreign employer, maybe it could count, but not if you're also trying to claim Canadian high-skilled work experience, because you can't claim more than 30 hours of employment in any given week. So there's a number of factors, Mikey.
Okay, this question is from Salmon. My son completed his graduation in civil engineering. He worked as a paid teaching assistant in the civil department for a period of 2 years. I'm assuming this is all outside of Canada. My understanding is that he can claim this as 1 year experience. So, Salmon, just to answer the question, we don't know how many hours your son worked, and it really comes down to hours. So I'm assuming that he probably didn't work 30 hours a week if he was, in school working as a teaching assistant. But if he was working 30 hours and it was outside of Canada, you arguably, you could count that as 1 year if he worked 1 year full time. Anything less than 30 hours, but greater than 15 hours can be considered part-time work. And yes, if it was done outside of Canada, then there's no restriction on going to school, studying in a post-secondary institution, and working either part-time or even full-time sometimes. But you really have to make sure you can explain it. And our letters of explanation that we cover in the Canadian Immigration Institute's Express Entry Accelerator, that course, we talk about the importance of using LOEs to explain anything that an officer may question, like, how are you studying and working full-time? Well, no longer is that a big issue here in Canada, apparently, because for quite a while, even our immigration department allowed individuals to work full-time hours while they were on studying. So that barrier there isn't such a taboo to it as there may have been in the early days of Express Entry. Okay, here's one for you, Alicia. This is from Nicole. So Nicole says, what are the chances of getting a PR after a first PR refusal because of a family member inadmissibility, and then finally got an Express Entry invitation under healthcare?
Oh man. So Nicole, please reach out and book a consult. This is something that's definitely something you need to talk to a lawyer about. So if somebody gets a bar for inadmissibility, then it depends on the reason for the inadmissibility. There's usually misrepresentation and a 5-year inadmissibility bar. There's criminal inadmissibility. There's health inadmissibility. There's financial inadmissibility. So it really depends what kind of inadmissibility your family member has been found to have. Generally speaking, if you have a direct family member, so a spouse or a child that is inadmissible, generally speaking, you are inadmissible also. And there is generally no way to get around that. So it's something where you really want to go and speak with a lawyer because this is super serious. Inadmissibility of a family member is a difficult thing.
And all you need to do is just go to our website, click on book a consultation, and it's holthelaw.com. I've kind of got the URL blocked here, but it's in the description. So slide over and click on book a consult, and it's as simple as just clicking and choosing the time that you want to set aside. And Alicia and myself, and look at that. He did not waste any time. Our newest lawyer, Canadian immigration lawyer. Awesome. So cool. So you can connect with any of us and we can work your way through this. And remember, when we hit this little triangle, that's kind of an indication that this is pretty complex. And so we'd better, we better kind of cut things a little bit short. Alicia, is it really 11:14? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we're late. We're late for our team meeting.
Holy cow. I didn't realize you guys have been asking so many good questions. Alicia and I didn't even realize we have our staff meeting that's come up here that we need to jump over on. Remember that we're here every Wednesday morning, and we really appreciate everybody that's following. If you like this, please like and subscribe, right? And make sure that you share it with other people. The more reach we can get on this, the better Alicia and I feel about the work that we're trying to do here. I don't know of any other immigration law firms that offer this type of a format, but we've been doing it for years. We love it. It's our way of trying to give back, to try to educate people so that they can avoid some of the most common problems. But it's also a way for us to reach out to you all over the world and say, hey, maybe we're not one of the big firms that has this huge marketing budget that can get in your Google search stream through paid ads. We don't do that. We just share information. We try to help, and then we rely on our clients that do book consults with us to leave reviews, and hopefully those reviews are something that gives you confidence that that we're a potential firm that you might want to hire to help you with your immigration. And if you go to our website here, you can see we post our Google ratings are all here from clients and from our consultations, and it's really easy. And the best way to reach out to us is just to click here on book a consultation. We've got some other tools and resources available as well. Make sure that you check out our blog post, our podcast, as Alicia alluded to earlier, of course, a YouTube channel and our other social media channels, and then of course the the foundational course that we offer is our Express Entry Accelerator and Masterclass, which was all redone at the beginning of 2024. So it's all brand new, current, and it's all led by myself. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. And Alicia, thank you. And once again, big shout out to our newest immigration lawyer in the firm, Igor Kryliuk. And we hope you guys have a very, very wonderful day. Take care.